The crying ape. Long, long ago, a file of chariots rumbled quickly across the plain late one spring. The soldiers wore sparkling armor. Banners fluttered in the breeze. Following them came several generals with their swords and spears. They were followed by a beautiful chariot. Sitting in the chariot was the great king of Chu. Every year the king took a trip through his kingdom to inspect his land, to hunt, to train his troops, and to get out of his stuffy old palace. The king had a general called Yang, who was very famous for his archery. Even now, over 2,000 years later, people still remember what a good shot he was. He never missed. The king trusted him. During the great hunt, the rabbits, deer, all the wild animals ran here and there in panic, but nowhere was safe from the arrows of General Yang. If he shot 100 times, he hit his target 100 times. On the plain was a huge old tree. As they passed, the soldiers heard a noise. They saw an ape in the branches above their heads. It jumped up and down disrespectfully, mocking the hunting soldiers. It even threw a nut at them. "Okay, I'll teach you a lesson," said an archer as he aimed at the ape. But as he shot his arrow, the ape dodged, and the arrow hissed harmlessly through the branches. A shout of laughter went up from the troops. "Lucky," snorted the soldier. "Take that." He shot another arrow, and this time the ape did not dodge. It snatched the arrow out of the air. Then it sniffed the arrow contemptuously before breaking it in two. Now the soldiers were very mad. They shot arrows at it, but the ape was so clever and so quick that it caught their arrows in midair and mocked them even more. When the king saw how disrespectful the ape was, he ordered General Yang to go shoot down the smart aleck ape. The ape seemed to understand, because as soon as General Yang rode toward the tree, the ape began to cry. Tears rolled down its face, and it sobbed and cried very piteously. The king asked, "Why is the ape crying?" General Yang answered, "It must know that my arrows never miss. So no matter how cunning it may be, it must die now at your Highness's command. That is why it is crying." The general hung his head in thought. How sad the ape was. All the other animals must be suffering too. His royal heart filled with compassion. He told General Yang to put away his weapons and called off the hunt, so that no more animals would be hurt. When he returned to his capital ahead of schedule, all the people there found out the king had been moved by an ape's tears. The people were all very happy to have such a kind and loving king, so they worked very hard for their country. And from then on, Chu was strong and powerful for hundreds of years. A turtle's gratitude. During the Qing dynasty of the 4th century, there was a middle-aged man called Kung. He was an official for the government, but he had practically the lowest official position in the whole government. His position was low, and so was his pay. Times were very difficult for him. Once, he saw a turtle someone was getting ready to eat. He felt very sorry for it. So he bought the turtle and took it to the river, and there he let it go. The turtle seemed to understand that Kung had saved it from the soup. As it swam away, it kept looking back at him. Kung watched until he couldn't see it anymore. Years later, he had reached a better position. Leading troops, he quelled a rebellion, and for his great deeds, the emperor raised him to the rank of lord, a high, powerful position. The official insignia for the rank of lord is a metal seal. When Kung was promoted, the royal artisans cast a seal for him, but for some reason it came out with a turtle on top, and the turtle was looking back over its shoulder. They thought that was strange, so they melted the seal down, made a new mold, and cast it again. But it still came out with a turtle looking back over its shoulder. The artisans tried over and over again. Every time they made the mold very carefully. Then everybody inspected it. Every time the mold was fine, but when they cast the seal, it came out with a turtle on top, and every time the turtle's head was looking back over its shoulder. The artisans thought this was uncanny. They decided to go to the new lord and see what he thought about it. They knelt in front of him and said, "My lord, as directed by our emperor of 10,000 years, we have tried to make a seal for you as a sign of your new rank. But every time we cast the mold, the seal comes out with a turtle on top. The turtle is always looking back over its shoulder." "Carry on," Kung directed. "Do it over again." The artisans followed his command, but once again the seal appeared with a turtle on top, looking back over its shoulder. Kung was perplexed. The news of this strange occurrence spread, and eventually reached the royal ears of the emperor. The emperor called Kung in to explain why his seal always came with a turtle. But Kung was at a loss to explain. On his way home, Kung suddenly remembered something. The next day in court, he reported, "Your Highness's loyal minister has considered the manner of the seal and the unexplainable turtles. Perhaps I have found a reason. Many years ago, this minister happened to see a fisherman preparing to cook and eat a turtle he had caught. This minister felt sorry for the turtle, and so purchased said turtle from the fisherman and released it in the river. The turtle seemed to understand, for it swam along the surface of the water and looked back as if in gratitude. Your Highness has currently granted me the rank of Lord. The official seal has a turtle on it. This must be a sign that I have had the opportunity to win such favor from Your Highness due to the gratitude of that turtle, which must have moved heaven on my behalf." The emperor told the court, "Those who do good will reap good rewards. The Lord Kung is an excellent example." Chung Tong and the Net. More than 3,500 years ago, there was a very kind and wise emperor. He was called Chung Tong. Every year he traveled around his empire to visit all his people and see if there was anything the government could do for them. One beautiful day, the birds were singing and the animals were enjoying the nice weather. The emperor smiled as he heard their pleasant calls. Then he saw huge nets spread where all the animals would get caught. He heard a trapper praying in a loud voice, and this is what the trapper prayed. "May all the birds in the sky, may all the animals on the ground, may all the beasts from north, east, west, and south come into my net. Let not one of them escape." Emperor Chung Tong was very upset to find such a greedy, heartless trapper. But he was also a very wise monarch. He did not command the trapper to stop hunting. Instead, with his own imperial hands, he took down 3 sides of the nets, leaving only one side. The trapper wondered what was going on, but he couldn't just go up and punch the emperor. Then he heard Emperor Chung Tong praying out loud, and this is what the emperor prayed. "May all who wish to dodge to the left, dodge to the left. May all who wish to dodge to the right, dodge to the right. May all who wish to go over the nets, go over the nets. May all who wish to duck under the nets, duck under the nets. May only those who do not wish to live any more enter my nets. With this, the trapper realized that he had been greedy and mean. He told everyone how kind their emperor was, so all the people trusted Chung Tong. The dynasty that he founded ruled China for over 600 years. Tzu Chan and the Fish. Tzu Chan was a statesman who lived during the spring-autumn period, some 2,500 years ago. Confucius praised his wisdom highly. Tzu Chan was so smart and so kind that Chinese people still honor him even today. He helped the poor, and he rescued those in danger. He enjoyed doing good, and in particular, he never liked to kill anything. One day, a friend sent him a present, several live fish. They were fat and looked delicious. They would certainly make a wonderful meal. When Tzu Chan received this gift, he was very grateful that his friend was so thoughtful. He appreciated, and then he accepted the gift happily. Then he called his servant. "Take these fish and put them in the fish pond in the yard." The servant said, "Master, this kind of fish is a very rare delicacy. If you put them in the fish pond, the water is not as clear as a mountain stream, so their flesh will not be as soft. They will not taste as good. You should eat them right away." Tzu Chan smiled. "I am the boss here. Go do as you are told. How could I bear to murder these poor, innocent fish just for the sake of their taste? I could not bear to do that." The servant had to obey orders. As she poured the fish into the pond, she told them, "Boy, you sure are a lucky fish. If you had been given to anybody but my master, you would already be cooking for dinner by now." the deer that saved its rescuer. The murmuring brook in the green forest flowed past glorious wildflowers which decorated the area around the little house there. The sun shone high in the sky. Suddenly, a deer raced into the courtyard of the house where a little boy was playing. The deer hooked the boy's clothing with its antlers. This scared the little boy so much he let out a howl that brought his mother running out to see what was wrong. She came out just in time to see the deer running off towards the mountains with her little boy. She was horrified. She ran after the deer as fast as she could go, and not too far away, she found her little boy sitting safely on the grass. When he saw his mother, the little boy laughed and stretched out his arms to her. She scooped him up. She was so happy she began to cry. She hurried back to their home with her very precious son. When she got there, she stopped dead in her tracks, amazed at what she saw. The huge tree in back of their house had fallen over while she was out chasing after her son. The whole roof was crushed under its enormous weight. The walls were squashed, and all the roofing tiles were smashed into powder. The chickens and dogs in the house were all dead. If she and her little boy had been in the house, then the little boy's mother remembered the day about a year before. A deer, fleeing a hunter, had run into her house. She felt sorry for the poor, frightened deer, so she quickly covered it with some clothes. When the hunter rushed in after it, he couldn't find it. He figured it must have gone out the back door, so he kept chasing it. When he was far, far away, she uncovered the deer and let it return to the forest. The deer seemed to understand that she had saved its life, because as it left, it kept bowing its head to her, as if thanking her for her compassion. She never imagined that the deer could remember her kindness. That deer somehow knew the tree was going to fall and crush her, so it came back to show its gratitude. When the boy's mother remembered all this, she thought, saving the life of another is the same as saving your own life. Elephants to the rescue. Some 2,000 years ago, in a river in ancient India, there was a pond full of fish. They lived happily in the clear water. They jumped and swam or just floated around, enjoying their watery home. But then, for a long time, it did not rain, and every day some more water evaporated. The pond had almost dried up. If the water did dry up, all of the fish would die under the hot, dry sun. The sun kept beating down on the dry earth. An old man happened to walk by, and he saw that the water was almost gone. His heart filled with compassion. He went straight to the king and said, "The water in the fish's pond is almost dry. The fish are in great danger. If it pleases your majesty, you might send 20 elephants to carry water to save the fish." The king was a Buddhist. As soon as he heard the old man's request, he said, "It is wonderful that you have such a kind, merciful heart. Go to the royal elephant stables and take as many elephants as you need to carry water, and save those poor fish." When the old man heard the king's reply, he took his 2 sons to the royal elephant stables. He selected 20 of the very best elephants. Then he went to the breweries and borrowed as many skins as he could. In India, in those days, liquor was stored and transported in skins. Getting the skins, the 3 led the 20 elephants to the biggest river in the region and filled all the skins with water. Then the 20 royal elephants carried the heavy skins filled with water to the fish pond, and they poured all the water into the pond. After many trips, the pond was again full, just as it had been before the drought. The fish in the pond were saved. They leaped and played and swam back and forth. When the old man saw how happy they were and watched the ripples on the surface of the water, all the worries, all the sadness that the long years had gathered in his tired old heart were immediately swept away. As the day turned into night, he and his sons cheerfully led the 20 elephants back to the royal stables. And then they went to tell the king their good news. The bird's reward. During the Han Dynasty, about 2,000 years ago, there lived a family called Yang. They were farmers and had only one child, who was so precious to them that they named him Treasure. Young Treasure was not only clever, kind, and quick-witted. He was also very good-looking, with his clear eyebrows and his bright eyes. His parents shaved all his hair off except for 2 locks on the top, which they then tied into 2 knots. Everybody agreed that he was very cute. Young Treasure loved nature. He spent a lot of time playing in the forests of the nearby mountain. One day, when he was 9 years old, he was playing outdoors as usual. Suddenly, he heard a cry above him. He looked up and saw a hunting arrow had just snatched a little bird out of the air. The owl was so startled to discover someone watching it hunt that it dropped the bird, which fell to the ground. The bird was so dazed, it just lay there without moving. Ants then came to take it away for food. The bird had been hurt by the owl's claws and the fall to the ground. It could not even move. Young Treasure ran over and picked the bird up, brushing off the ants. He took the bird home and raised it in a bamboo cage. He loved his little bird. He fed it flower petals and tended to its wounds until it was strong enough to fly. Then he took it to the forest and let it go. He told it, "You're free now, but watch out for owls. Goodbye." Not long afterwards, he had a strange dream. A child, dressed in brown clothes, came to thank him for saving his life. He presented Treasure with 4 priceless white jade bracelets. He said, "Sir, I am an envoy of the Heavenly Queen. You have saved my life. I would like to show my gratitude by presenting these 4 immaculate jade bracelets to you, with my blessing that your children and grandchildren be as spotless as pure jade, and that they hold posts in the top ranks of the government." Young Treasure did not want to take the gifts, but the little boy dressed in brown insisted, so he finally took the bracelets. As soon as he did, he woke up and found it had been a dream. That sure was a strange dream, he thought as he shook his head. Young Treasure's sons, grandsons, great-grandsons, and great-great-grandsons were as spotless as pure jade. For 4 generations, his descendants all held posts in the top ranks of the government. My lap is your perch. Long ago, an old, old hermit lived deep in the woods. He was so kind that he never killed any living creature. One day, he was sitting under an ancient tree Just as he began to meditate, he felt a gust of wind coming towards him. That's strange, he thought, and he opened his eyes. He saw a little bird sitting in his lap. The bird was not at all flustered to be sitting there. In fact, it was quite at home, as if it were perching on a twig. The hermit recited Buddha Amitabha's name and said to himself, "So, you think my lap is a perch? Well then, I can hardly refuse. Amitabha, this is good. This is good." Then the little bird curled up and went to sleep, right there in his lap. The hermit was afraid to disturb its dreams, so he began looking into his own heart, and immediately he entered a very deep state of meditation. Much later, he left his meditation state, but the bird was still sleeping soundly. He did not move because he did not want to bother it. He said very quietly, "Amitabha, just keep sleeping. You can fly away when you've slept your full." Finally, the little bird woke up. It flapped its wings and stretched its legs. It chirped quietly a few times. Then it straightened its feathers with its beak, flapped its wings a few more times. Only then did it fly away. When it had flown away, the old hermit got to his feet. He watched his little friend until it was out of sight. Then he left the tree and went back to his little hut. Saving the Dragon King's son. Once, there was an old doctor named Sun. He was very kind, especially to animals. While he was taking a stroll outside the village one fine autumn day, he happened to see two children who had captured a snake. They were playing with it, and the snake was so exhausted that it was almost dead. The old man couldn't bear to see even a snake die, so he got some money out of his pocket and bought the snake from them. Then he took it to the edge of a pond and let it go. A few days later, he was sitting in his study. He dozed off. Before long, he saw a man dressed in green come in. The man asked Sun to go with him. Sun went, and the man took him to an awesome palace. Everything was spick and span. Sun had no idea where he was. When Dr. Sun and his guide came into the main hall, a very important man came out. He looked very imperious. he addressed Son, saying, "My son was out playing. If you had not saved him, sir, I am afraid my son would not have gotten away with his life." The man then had his servants serve a feast for their honored guest. After the feast, the father presented jewels and treasures to Son, but the doctor didn't want any. The father insisted, so finally Son said, "I have heard that in the crystal palace of the Dragon King," for by now he had figured out where he was, "there are many extraordinary medicines which can cure all illnesses and ailments which people contract. If you would be so kind as to transmit a few of your special prescriptions so that I might save suffering people, that would be an act of great merit." The Dragon King, as the father turned out to be, immediately got out jade tablets inscribed with 36 prescriptions, and he gave these to old Son. After he had received the prescriptions, Dr. Son returned to his study. He woke up with a start. He realized it had been just a dream. But the funny thing was that from then on, whenever he treated a patient, no matter how serious the patient's illness was, the patient was cured immediately. In this way, Dr. Son saved many, many people. The Sami who rescued the ants. A little monk who is not old enough to become ordained is called a Sami. Once there was a little Sami who studied Buddhism with a very wise teacher. He was a very good student. He was respectful, sincere, and obedient. He learned very quickly. The teacher was so wise that he could foretell the future. The teacher knew from the beginning that his little student could not live very long. One day he counted and realized that the little student had only 7 days left to live. He felt very sad. He called the little Sami to him and said, "Little Sami, you haven't seen your mother for a long time. I think you need a vacation. You run on home and visit your mother. Come back 8 days from now." He did this so at least the little Sami could die in his own parents' home. When the little Sami left, the teacher was very sad. He thought he would never again see his little student. 8 days later, who should show up but the little Sami? His teacher was delighted, but he was also puzzled because the little student looked wonderful. He didn't look like someone who had been about to die. Finally, the teacher decided to find out what had happened. He told the boy, "Son, I have foretold the future many times. I have never been wrong. I sent you home because you were doomed to die within 7 days. But the 7 days have already passed. Not only are you still alive, but you look great. The image of death has left you. How did you do this?" The little Sami was thunderstruck. He didn't have any idea how to answer his teacher. So the teacher entered the settled state of meditation. Before long, he understood. "Son, on the way home, did you save some ants?" "Yes, teacher. On the way home, I saw a whole bunch of ants trapped by some water. They were about to drown, so I got a piece of wood and rescued them." That's it then. Your kind heart has earned you a long life. The wise men of old said, saving one life earns more merit than building a temple, a pagoda of 7 stories. You have saved hundreds of lives, so you will live a very long time. You have earned a good future, but you still have to keep working to save living creatures. Spread the message of the Buddha. Teach all people to be compassionate. Tell everyone not to kill living creatures. Let all animals live in peace. The little Sami never forgot his teacher's words. He worked very hard, and he became a great monk. He lived for a long, long time. The mother deer. The forest was very still in the early morning. The rising sun lit up the earth, the forest, and the plains. The mountains glowed with a beautiful light, and the water glistened as the light hit the ripples in the stream. Everything was peaceful. Suddenly, a man appeared. He hurried across the stream and reached a meadow. He stopped, looked around him, as if he was looking for something. This man had a strong face, big ears, eyebrows like swords, and eyes like a tiger's. He had an adventurer's hat on his head. He held a bow in his left hand, and his quiver of arrows hung on his right hip. He looked vigorous, tough, and lively. He loved the great outdoors, and he especially loved hunting. His name was Shu. He spotted a fawn coming out of the forest. Shu smiled and knocked an arrow. Zip! The fawn fell over almost as soon as the sound of the bowstring was heard. Shu was proud of his good shot. Just as he was about to go pick up his game, he saw the fawn's mother running to her child. When the mother deer saw what had happened to her baby, she whimpered and cried and licked her baby's wound. Shu had never expected this to happen. He watched as the mother tended her baby, but Shu's aim had been too accurate. The wound was too deep, and before long the little deer died. When the little deer died, its mother fell down dead as well. Shu was amazed. He could not figure out why the mother deer had died too. He took out his hunting knife and cut open her corpse to find out what was wrong. He saw that her organs, that everything inside of her, had broken into tiny pieces. The mother deer was so sad that her baby had been killed, that everything inside of her had burst from her sorrow. Shu then became terribly sorry for what he had done. Right away, he broke his bow across his knee and threw his arrows into the stream. He left his home and went deep into the mountains to find a teacher. He worked hard for many years, and finally he became a great Buddhist, a great peacemaker. A dragon in disguise. There was an old man named Chu. He was well over 60. He had done many good things throughout his life. In the old days, transportation was very difficult. He donated money to have roads made and bridges built so people could get around more easily. People in need could always count on him for help. His neighbors had many good things to say about him. One day, he saw a fisherman on his way to the market to sell a carp he had caught. This beautiful fish had red markings as bright and warm as a fire in winter. Its eyes were as shiny as stars in the sky. Old Chu thought it would be a shame to eat such a beautiful fish. He bought the carp for a good price and put it in a pond. He felt very good about that. But Chu was an old man, and nobody lives forever. Not long after that, he felt weak, very lightheaded, and very sad. he thought he might not live much longer. As he was lying home sick, a little serving boy came in and said, "Mr. Chu, my master has sent me to invite you to eat with him." Old Chu didn't recognize whose serving boy it was, but he thought getting out of bed might do him good. A meal outside might lift up his spirits. He followed the boy. "I must really be sick," he thought, as they made their way. "Everything looks hazy and glowing in a golden light." Before long, he found himself standing in front of an ornate palace with carved pillars and painted beams. A sign over the front door read, "The Crystal Palace." Strange. Isn't that the name of the dragon's palace? Wondered old Chu. In a few moments, out came his host, a most impressive man with thick eyebrows, long eyes, and 5 long strands of whiskers. He looked lively and powerful, yet virtuous. After they had chatted a bit, old Chu found out his host was none other than the Dragon King himself. Together, they enjoyed a royal feast. The Dragon King told old Chu, "One of my sons was out fooling around the other day and was kidnapped by a bandit who was going to murder him. Fortunately, you were there to save him. For this, we are most grateful. Actually, your time on this earth is just about up. But because you have rescued a dragon in the guise of a fish, you have earned the right to live longer. I have prepared this simple dinner to express my gratitude and explain this to you." Old Chu humbly replied, "I hardly dare to accept your generosity. From now on, I will do even more good deeds to show my gratitude." After their feast, old Chu woke up in bed with a full stomach. It must have been a dream, he told himself. But if it was a dream, why am I so full? He did many more good deeds and died peacefully many years later without any suffering at the age of 120. General Mao and the Turtle. About 1600 years ago, there was a kind-hearted Confucian scholar named Mao. Once, before he had passed the imperial examinations and become a government official, he happened to see a fisherman on his way to the market to sell a turtle. Mao immediately bought the turtle, but instead of eating it, he took it to a nearby lake. He let it go. Later, Mao became a very powerful general. But even the very best generals lose sometimes. And one time, General Mao's forces were beaten, and they had to run for their lives. The enemy was following, hot on their heels. General Mao was running as fast as everyone else. He reached a great lake, but there were no boats around. There was no bridge. There was no way to cross the water. General Mao could not swim. And anyway, he was dressed in battle armor, which would carry him straight to the bottom. He looked back. He saw the enemy was almost on top of him. He sighed and said, "The heavens have abandoned me." Rather than fall into enemy hands, General Mao prepared to take his own life. Just as he was about to commit suicide, he noticed something huge come to the surface of the water and float over close to the shore where he was preparing to kill himself. He had no time to worry about what was floating in the lake. The enemy was coming closer and closer. General Mao decided, if I kill myself here, the enemy will capture my corpse. This will disgrace my country and my emperor. It would be better for me to throw myself into the lake so they cannot find my body. With that, he leaped into the water of the lake. To his surprise, he landed on something. Then he started to move away from the shore, across the lake, to the other side. General Mao was astonished. The enemy reached the lake. They yelled, they howled, they shot arrows at General Mao, but he was already out of range. The arrows fell harmlessly into the water. They did not touch him. General Mao looked down. He discovered he was standing on a huge turtle. The turtle took him to the other side of the lake. General Mao got off and went up the bank. The turtle rose to the surface and nodded to him. Then it sank back into the water and swam away. Then General Mao remembered many years before he had saved a turtle and released it in a lake. This very lake. Now, in his time of need, the turtle had come to rescue him. A life for a life. Bees prevent a miscarriage of justice. One day, a bartender in a tavern happened to see that there was a bee drowning in one of his liquor kegs. He felt sorry for the little bee, so he lowered a chopstick to the bee so it could climb out. He put the chopstick down and watched as the bee dried out. It flapped its wings so they could dry out faster. Then, when it was all dry again, it flew away, buzzing busily. After that, the bartender noticed that quite a few bees were attracted by the smell of the liquor. They fell in and drowned. From then on, he kept an eye out for them and rescued many bees. This went on for many years. One day, he was startled when bailiffs from the court marched into his tavern. Without a word of explanation, they handcuffed him and marched him off to court. When he got there, he discovered he had been framed. Some captured bandits who held a grudge against him said the bartender was one of their gang. The judge in charge of the case had him hauled in to behead him with the rest. The bartender protested that he was innocent, but the bandits had already said he was guilty, so the authorities assumed he was guilty. The bartender's heart went cold. He saw the main judge pick up the red brush used for writing out the death sentence. Just as the main judge picked up his brush to write, a loud buzzing was heard coming closer, getting louder, louder. A great swarm of bees came flying in the window and landed on the judge's red brush. The judge waved the brush to shake them off, but more and more bees came. They did not sting, but they would not go away either. The judge thought this most extraordinary. He mused, perhaps these bees are here to prevent a miscarriage of justice. At that, the main judge questioned the bandits again and found contradictions in their testimony. He grilled them over again. This time he was sure that they had almost executed an innocent man. Only when the judge called off the bartender's death sentence did the swarm of bees fly away. Then the judge asked the bartender if he knew why the bees had come to save him. I really don't know either, Your Honor. Maybe it is because I have saved lots of bees that almost drowned in my liquor vats. They come to the smell. Then they fall in and can't get out. When I see that, I always save them. Now, I guess they've come to save me. This is truly wonderful. You have had a narrow escape. Always remember that you owe your good life to your good deeds. Remember to do all the good deeds you can. You are sure to enjoy good fortune in the future. The judge's words proved true. The bartender kept doing all the good deeds he could. His business got better year after year. He lived a long, happy life and died peacefully, a very rich man.